Hello and welcome to Virtual Biotech Cafe. Virtual Biotech Cafe is organized by Lithuanian Biotechnology Association, and we take this platform and we meet with Lithuanian scientists, entrepreneurs from academia, from industry to discuss their achievements, their technological developments, research, inventions, and all the aspects related to life science and biotech industry and academia development in Lithuania and abroad. My name is Agnė Vaitkevičienė, and today I will be sharing with you a story about Lithuanian startup called Genie Biotech. It's a very mysterious and magical name for the startup company, and it's actually very relates to how I met them. So as this company is Lithuanian, we're located actually in the same city in Vilnius, in the capital of Lithuania, as well as even in the same building. But guess where we met? We met far away in San Diego in US, and I was so fascinated with their team, with their research technology that they're developing, so I had to share it with everyone. And this is how today we have Grigorij Sutov, who is the CEO of the company Genie Biotech. Hello, how are you?
Hi everyone. Yes, thank you. Thanks.
Yes, that was amazing. So I always thought I know everyone who is working, operating, but that's the magic of new startups growing in the ecosystems and developing new technologies in the area. So I really hope that we can share as much as you can to our audience today, and starting maybe, what is Genie Biotech? What do you do? What is your technology?
Right. Yeah. So Agnė, thanks first of all for inviting me, and it's a shame my colleague couldn't join. He's traveling today. But yes, maybe I'll give a little overview to the broad audience of who we are and what we do. So what we've been working on for the last 3-4 years is so-called site-specific protein conjugation technology. Now, what does it mean? Think about the protein, right? I know to a lot of people protein is something small and invisible, but for scientists it's a pretty big
Yeah.
molecule, right, to compare to, I don't know, aspirin. So one of the ways to make your protein better, or to create sort of novel modalities, you have to attach other things to your protein. And what our technology does, it activates the protein in one particular position of the protein. So in other words, our technology is like you can call it nano glue. I don't like nano glue because I usually spray the glue everywhere, right? So it's really specific. I'd probably use the word nano connector, maybe nano pin, or something, yeah, something similar. So you introduce a nano connector, nano pin to one position of the protein, which is again a pretty big molecule to compare to other small molecules. And once you introduce that nano connector, then you can start attaching that protein to other molecules. Basically, yeah, the world is your oyster. You can attach to small things. You can also attach to other proteins, or even to big things like nanoparticles, which are even bigger than the proteins, right? Yeah. So that's the overview of our technology without going too deep into specific applications.
So, but that allows, this connection allows a lot of different applications of, I don't know, drug development and so on. What are the key, for instance, options for applying it?
Correct. As you pointed out, you can, imagine a lot of different things what you can attach to. So maybe I'll briefly speak about a first application, which was not surprising, because when we built the technology, we filed a patent, we started thinking about the application, and then knock knock, the COVID came in, right? So we're like, okay, let's try to assemble the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine candidate. So what we've done, we have taken, well, probably everyone has seen, the image of the COVID virus, SARS-CoV-2 virus with those spikes on the surface, right? So what we've done, we've taken the just the tip of the spike, which is called receptor binding domain. That's the part which binds to human receptors. And we attached our nanoconnector to one specific position of that tip of the spike. And then we took a separate nanoparticle. Now this nanoparticle, in terms of the size, is very, very similar to real virus, right? It's actually called virus-like particle.
Okay.
And then what we did, we essentially studied that nanoparticle with those activated RBDs. So if you look at it, it looks like pretty much a real SARS-CoV-2 virus with those RBDs sitting on the surface. And yes, that's essentially the vaccine, which we've tested in mice, worked very well. I don't know, unfortunately, yeah, we decided not to continue this project anymore, or at least for now. Who knows? Let's see how the whole COVID situation will continue. But the good thing is that we've demonstrated that our technology can be applicable to the essentially recombinant-based vaccine construction, right? And maybe you could ask, why do you want to have one specific nanoconnector at one particular point instead of many random? That's what we did in the publication. We compared our technology to sort of random conjugation chemistry, and think of it. The first benefit, well, first of all, we saw a much better immune response, and the reason for that is, first of all, instead of randomly attaching that protein to the nanoparticle surface, you have a nicely oriented protein, and that is known to trigger a very good immune response. It's triggers so-called B-cell receptor cross-linking, but basically, our immune cells are evolved to recognize proteins which are arranged in the same orientation in the pattern, because that's usually the surface of bacteria or viruses.
So that type of application can be applied also for drugs for cancer, basically, as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's one of the areas we are really interested at the moment, and we started working on it, is actually therapeutic cancer vaccines. Now, the difference between therapeutic and prophylactic is there are already some anti-cancer vaccines which are targeting the virus which can cause the cancer, but there is a very fascinating and hot area where scientists are trying to create a vaccine against the proteins which are upregulated in the cancer, and that's what we're actually dedicating a lot of time and focus into that, because with SARS-CoV-2, it's obviously with, you don't know, one day you need a vaccine, second day you don't need a vaccine. It was a bit of the roller coaster, right? With cancer, sorry, it's
always there.
It's always there, exactly. It's always there. There will not be, at least we think, there won't be a single solution to it. You have to have multiple different types of treatments.
Even very specific, very targeted therapies. So basically, your main goal is to focus your technology, which is like a tool for opening other technologies, like enabling other solutions and technologies to solve specifically, for instance, cancer or some infectious diseases. What is there? This is the priority, but there are other applications because it's a tool. It's not like you're not developing the drug itself. Yes, correctly.
Well, not at that stage. Not at that stage. No, but who knows how things are gonna go? Of course, we would like to be in a position where we have the technology and we have our own pipeline, but step by step. In this life, right?
So I will get back a little bit back, and we will come back to the technology later on. But because I'm listening for all these technical things, and I was wondering about, are you a scientist? How did you end up in building together with your partner a startup? Are you a scientist yourself? What is your journey to this point?
Right. So you're asking how was the journey? Yes, for me, a scientist, to actually creating a startup.
Yes. So yes, what is your background?
Well,
where did you study?
Right. So well, I don't know how far back should I go, but maybe, well, first of all, yes. obviously I got fascinated with chemistry and biology, in fact, in school in Vilnius. But then I ended up going, actually finished the school in the UK, and then ended up doing my studies in London, undergrad, master's, PhD. That's where I've met my colleagues, co-founders, who were first of all friends, then turned colleagues, right? So I have to manage both.
So is that Alex? It's Alex,
yes,
yes.
Alex, yes.
Alex should
Carl
be
as
here
well.
today,
Alex
but
should
he was
be,
not.
yes, Alex should be here as well. Unfortunately, he's traveling. He's right now probably sitting on a plane, so he couldn't make it, but maybe in the future, right? So Alex I've met actually.
So sorry, so you had like a really scientific route coming to here. When it switched, like were you working on something on in your PhD studies or later on, and how did it switch?
Right. What was the
Was
the
you
key
and
point,
Alex
right?
combination work there?
Well, look, I'm not going to deny. We're always, well, I don't want to say dreaming, but chatting or thinking how cool it would be to have your own startup or company. Again, maybe at the point when we were doing undergrad, at least me, I was less aware of all these opportunities, and I think now in the media you see a lot about startups, a lot about these companies. To me back then, like the only company I could think of, something like Fermenters, which is massive, big, and I'm like, I don't know how to get there, right?
Yes.
But as the time went on, you started to collect more information, and obviously, yes, initially we were just simply chatting. Oh yeah, it would be cool one day to do something without any particular plans. And I think you ask when was that, the reflection point or whatever you call it. That was probably towards the end of my PhD actually, because I started my PhD a little bit earlier. And as I was approaching towards the end, I had to sit down with Alex and like, okay, what do we do? I need to have a plan, right? Do we chase our dreams, right? Or we just go do postdocs and wherever. So we had a lot of those way more serious discussions, because one thing is obviously to chat, oh yeah, it would be cool to do something. Yes, it would be cool. But then, okay, you have to sit down and switch the question from would it be cool to are we doing it?
Yeah.
And fair enough, we decided let's give a go. And yeah, that's when, well, I graduated first, then Alex graduated, then Carl joined as well. And that's how the Genie started.
This story is really important to hear, because I've been talking already few years back with PhD students of their, projecting on the future, what they're going to do after they finish the studies and so on. So that's really one of the way to go. There are plenty others, but that's one of the way to go. So to overview, so the motivation, so you were kind of like looking at it, collecting information how to do it, so overcoming the fears or misunderstanding on how the ecosystem looks. Good team, yes. So I'm just reflecting on what you said.
Team is very vital. Like I couldn't do it by myself. That's a fact. In fact, none of us could do it on their own. You have to have a strong team, which are all on the same page, all supporting each other, all bring their own skills, expertise, right? Could be both scientific and non-scientific. It's a must. It's a must. Yes. And even then, I think it was so. I mean, you do so many things for the first time, and now in retrospect, you waste so much time. You think, oh my gosh, I wasted so much time there or there. I could have done it faster. But at that time, you don't know how to do it, yes. And you have to figure out. And all the time, new things are coming because none of us done it for the first time. So I think psychologically you should be prepared for it. It's definitely not an easy route. Right, I'm not saying that. Oh yes.
One of my question was like, okay, so we're scientists, we're deep into the lab, and here we build startup, and there's so administrative stuff. And if you, for instance, if you get grants, there's so many other documents, like a lot to deal with that you never had experience with.
It's a lot. It's a lot, and you think that you get used to something, you figure out, then something else comes up, right? I think initially as we started, it was easier because it was, okay, we need to build the tech, right? So we need to solve the science. okay, you solve the science, you think that's it, but then, okay, we have to deal with the patent. And patent on its own, when you deal with it for the first time, it's, again, not an easy task. Even though you have, lawyers, other people who are helping you, but they will not write it for you.
Yes.
You have to
The
feed them
technological part, the
everything
scientific
exactly,
part.
and you have to find that communication and deal with all that. Then comes the whole, well, probably let's say it's, I don't know, call it marketing, maybe business development better, right? Where, yeah, which way to go, how, because in our case, we have to find partners who can use our technology, who could build things together, right? What's the
Yes.
best approach there? And again,
It's very broad scope of usage of that, and usually I also find it that the startups in early stage, they have so many options on which, and it's very hard to decide which is the best application from business perspective, where to go, where to develop to, and you don't know if you chose the right path. So it's very important to analyze the market, talk to people. Yes,
that's the best problem. That's the best. You can look at the numbers, you can look at the screen for hours, and you think you have the solution for it, but then you go like to the conference, and you actually start seeing, not just, arranging the meetings, but you see people's response, what they're interested in. That's a big factor which you will not see on the screen. You see, you're trying to suggest something, and they're like, nah. And you say, oh, this, oh, wow, the eyes light up, and you say, okay, that's what makes them exciting, so maybe we should dedicate a bit more time there.
But even in the beginning, when, for instance, during your PhD studies, because we talked about already two factors, motivation and team, and the third is the technology, the idea, basically. So most of the studies focused on fundamental science, some of them in the applied science, but how to see the application, whether it's worth bringing forward?
Well,
how do you evaluate that?
so this technology, you have to spend some time in a certain field to see certain benefits, right? So this technology was actually envisaged by a colleague, Carl, who was at the time he was doing PhD in Oxford, and he saw that, oh, it would be really nice to essentially create that nano connector in a bit different way. So then we had to find a way how to make it, because it was one thing to have it on the paper, that molecule, right? Then we had to actually make it, which was another story, which took us a while. Initially, well, like a few months will be done. No. 3 years, but even then you're not sure. As you say, you build it, and obviously Carl was he had a sort of good understanding about the vaccine application, right? But what we see now, there are way more opportunities to it, especially in novel protein therapeutics. Another big thing, well, we think it could be really applicable, for example, sustained delivery of proteins, because one of the features of our technology, which again, we didn't know that time, we just found out as we're building it, and initially, like, we got really startled and like, oh, that's a bit unexpected, that's not what we really wanted. We wanted to have a very stable bond, which is stable for days, but actually it slowly reverses. Eventually we found also the way how to control it not to reverse, but initially we saw that it slowly reverses. But then over time we realized that actually can be used for sustained delivery. We attach your protein to something, and over time it slowly releases. That's a big niche in biotech industry, which we were not aware at that time.
Actually, listening to you and thinking of one comment that I had from like a PhD student, like, oh, but in business there's not so much science. Here's the example. There's so much science.
I think business, right? So I think you should differentiate different things, right? There is a business, let's call it established companies, which
biomanufacturing facilities,
where you probably have to come very strictly monitor processes, quality control methods. Yes, I agree that, well, science is happening, but it's a repeated science, and there is sort of probably no room to, you know, playing around and stuff. A startup is different. It's
A lot of creation.
yeah, like,
Everywhere.
and that's the thing. If you come up with something, yeah, that could lead to some sort of, call it, commercial success or whatever. But yeah, so I think you should differentiate those things. In fact, if you look, you know, in the Western world, Europe, United States, I mean, all of the startups, all the not necessarily startups, all of the sort of companies, most of them are coming from academia, right? Which they find something, they start spinning it out, then you build a company on that. So sure, maybe at the later stage, and that takes time, by the way. That's something we realize as well. It's so different to, let's say, app development, where you can build things, test things in 1 year, and you can figure out whether it's working or not. But to build a, you know, sort of revenue generating biotech, it could easily take you 10 years. That's nothing surprising. So whilst in that phase, absolutely creativity, like science, different thinking, yeah, these are the qualities you really need.
You already 3 years in, 4 years in?
Yeah, well, we pretty much, actually 4, I would say.
So what your team looks like? How many people you have?
So right now here in Lithuanian sort of branch, we're trying to focus on these novel applications, right? That's what we're trying to play around, novel applications. We're also trying to build few additional technologies which could be put together with our existing one. So right now, well, physically it's me who's responsible. Alex is traveling back and forth, so he's semi-local in Vilnius, right? Yeah. He's semi-local, yes, that's how I'd call it. And now I actually hired two sort of two new people, like fresh graduates, basically, to help out in the lab. So it's slowly, but growing slowly.
That's a startup that grows. And so my next question is, why Lithuania? You mentioned that you were doing a PhD in UK. It's a big country where you can, you know, also develop a startup, and there's a lot of like accelerators that we might liking. But why Lithuania?
It's a very good question, right? It's a very good question. And then you know, well, first of all, I'm from Lithuania, right? I'm local. Alex is semi-local. I'm fully local. Yeah. But so yeah, look, it wasn't an easy decision. You know, we're thinking, but at the same time, we're thinking for a while. But you know, as we're starting a startup, one thing is to think, the second thing is to act, right? And actually, one of the things which triggered that, well, not necessarily transition, but also establishing the Lithuanian company is COVID. So, because I had a period where I could work from the computer, I haven't seen my parents in a while. I just came there, and suddenly COVID came, and then I realized I got stuck. And then actually, we're talking to Rimas from Baltimas, and he said, "Oh, there is this grant on COVID-19, right? Do you want to try to apply?" I'm like, "Well, we don't have a company, anything." He's like, "No, just talk to them. Maybe we'll figure out." Well, thanks for Rimas on that, you know. And yeah, we go in touch with Mita, and because we were already building that vaccine candidate, and they're like, "Well, yeah, guys, yeah, just try to apply and see, and you know, you don't have to establish a company, but if you get a grant, then you'll have to do it." And that's how it all started. And it was sort of a organic, slow growth, step by step.
It was not originally planned.
We're thinking about it.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was not that I'm coming to Lithuania to start a company. No, I just came here just to calm down a little bit, because it was a very intense period before, like, filing the patents. I was drained. I just wanted to come home and work from home for a bit. And then, yeah, just slowly.
So now, post-COVID.
Now post-COVID,
you're still here.
I'm still here, exactly. And we see quite a few benefits, you know, in Lithuania. It's you know, obviously, it's European Union. Keep in mind the UK, the whole Brexit. There are these uncertainties, right? I'm from here, so it makes life easier. So, you know, we've been in Jersey before as well for 3 years, and Alex is from Jersey, right? And that when you have someone from the team who is local, that makes the whole process easier, right? I'm from here, so I obviously I speak Lithuanian, although way more people actually I was surprised speak English. Even we now sit and talk in English, and there are universities, there are centers, there is talent pool, there is a maybe not as established biotech infrastructure as in the UK or the US, but it's growing, and that's good. When you have something in the growth phase, it's good.
What about collaboration? You mentioned already some collaboration.
We're always open for collaboration. Always. Our technology is asking for collaborations.
But you had experience in Lithuania to collaborate with companies on developing
absolutely.
Working on research.
Yes. We do. We do. In fact, we had and we have at the moment, and yeah. We in science, it's very rarely you can do things by yourself. You have to find people who you can work with, because then you can just make much better science. On your own, I mean, as your own team is. Yeah. It's much better to collaborate. So yeah, we collaborate, with some companies and some actually research from Vilnius University, the research group, and.
Yeah, well, I think last summer on Virtual Biotech Cafe we also had like 3 startups in a row, to share their stories, and at that moment we don't have now the live comments that you can ask questions, because I cannot read now the Facebook page, I cannot read the comments, but there are always comments when listening to startup stories. Okay, if you're still like in kind of R&D phase. Also, how you live from,
right,
how
yes.
the startup
it's a
is alive,
very good
connected to
question.
maybe
It's a
investment
very good question.
and so on.
So
What's your tips on that?
That's one of the reasons, as I'm saying, startups. It's not an easy. It's not an easy road, and one of the major bottlenecks, I would say, yes, financing, of course, right? Because especially in biotech, if you want to build something cool, or something which can be cool, you never know. It's a startup, right? It will take time. You can't build a cool thing in 6 months or even a year.
And with the
2
investment, they want quick
exactly
return time.
And you can't. I know in the US it's different. They understand way more what biotech development means. But yes, so we've been on a very tight budget. We slept 3 of us, co-founders, in one room for a few years, right? Yes, we went through that phase, and that's all fine. That was a really cool experience. Yes, well, right now we have a little bit of investment, basically, so we can.
But what just sharing, because a lot of startups go, do the pitching and so on. I know in Lithuania it's very hard to get investment more. It's likely outside Lithuania, but it's still, you have to be at certain stage of the development. If it's very early, you probably would live off the grants or something like that to make your technology move a bit further, so it would show the value for the investors. What stage are you? What you see, is it like a continuum still for the investment period until you get like something to present to the clients, or do you have clients basically?
You mean in that case,
yes, because
right?
you have tools, so that is pretty.
Yeah, well, look, do we have clients now? It's a good question. We are going towards it. Again, it's not a slow process, and again, for clients,
is it more like a partnership with
it could be different. It could be anyway. In any case, what we want to use someone to use our technology, right? Now, our technology is not really just buy it and that's it. It's basically to license it in, right? And for that, there's a very good Lithuanian saying, you know, to buy a cat in a bag, no one wants that, right? So they want to test it.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely normal thing. So think of it, we're at that stage where, yes, there are some companies who are testing it and or about to test, I would probably say, and yes, if that works, hopefully we can transition to.
That's a typical practice because yeah, they have to test it
exactly
whenever you develop.
Yeah, no one wants, you know,
Yes.
to put a signature on something they're not sure about. But yeah, but that's the route. We're actually also, you know, having the plans on to, but let's see how that goes, to essentially maybe build some research tools which could generate a bit quicker revenue, but a bit smaller one, right? So sort of we're thinking about multiple revenue streams, you know, maybe several ones which would be more financially rewarding, but they will take way longer. But on the other hand, if we could create additional revenue stream where it's not as big, but it helps with, I don't know, salaries.
Well, that's just very typical,
lab
actually.
space, reagents. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, because I think that it's common in Lithuanian startups to have, you know, options. So we have a long-term goal that we're seeking this for, like, you know, I don't know, building up some product technology that will be has high revenues, but keeping up the process because it's way too long for investors to be, you know, delegating the money for a long period. You have to kind of manipulate the situation and try to, but for that you have to have determination.
Absolutely.
That motivation, because at this point the starters say, oh, that's way too difficult, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And I think,
so what is that motivation now? Because we were talking about motivation at the beginning. What is the driver now?
Well, what is the driver now? I think it's complicated, I'm not gonna lie. And again, I think that's something should be spoken about, right? Because I think when you start doing a startup, you think like, oh my gosh, everything is gonna be cool. You're gonna draw a nice idea on the board, you're gonna make it, you're gonna attract investment, you're gonna sell it, and you're gonna retire nicely. No, I mean, if you do it, great for you, but reality is different, right? Maybe 1 in a million, but most of the cases, it's first of all, you live in a constant doubt. You live in a constant uncertainty, right? And as you speak, I think initially we thought that we are unique. But you actually start speaking to other startups, some of them, you know, are successful. They don't know, guys, that's absolutely normal. That's absolutely normal to go through those phases where you think your technology is not worth pursuing your time. It's absolutely normal that, you know, you fail or what you're doing doesn't make sense. It's normal.
And if
your mood goes like this.
Yeah, and if it's normal, if you start with the one idea, one technological solution, and finish successfully and completely different.
We actually, in fact, when we came after PGs, we had 3 ideas. We had 3 ideas, and then just one of them we realized, yeah, it progressed because we realized actually how to make it. Because the other ones, maybe the other one, for example, was, let's say, quite interesting, but then we realized that manufacturing it just wouldn't make sense. So we had to drop it, right?
Yeah, well, that's very important because a lot of these technologies, even if we're discussing of this technologies that would spin off from academia, a lot of them have not been tested in the real world. So to say, like we cannot test it as such in biotechnology because this is actually the rule in different sectors where you have to test it in that environment. If you're developing, I don't know, an app or a device or something like that, we cannot actually do that. We have to go through, you know, million investment to test it on that real environment. So, but you kind of have to have the expertise to evaluate it, whether it will go further. Well, the probability is it very low or not? So all the knowledge is really important. You mentioned that you kind of went through the process learning yourself. So I know that in UK there are like accelerators and so on. I know that our association is very, pushing. So we had a life science accelerator here in Lithuania that helped through these processes, not just motivating, but helping through all this investment technology. Were you using any acceleration
Absolutely,
things?
and probably it's a good it's a good time to say thanks to all these people around. Actually, me and Alex that actually surprised by the probably say governmental, those institutional support, right? The same Meta, who helped with COVID, not just COVID-19 grant, but also
I
with
will
other
just say
little.
for those that are not Lithuanians and listening, Meta is
Oh, yeah,
Science
sorry.
and Innovation
Yes,
Agency
yes,
in
yes,
Lithuania.
yes,
Now it's
yes,
Innovation
yes, yes,
Agency.
yes. Let's take the same example where we met in the conference in San Diego, which was organized. Now I don't want to mention the name. It was all changing now, which was the
Yes.
business association. No,
No, that's Innovation Agency.
Innovation
now.
Agency. Anyway, yes. And again, it's a really cool thing when think of it like all these people. They are, in a way, they're kind of additional members of your team with very specific tasks, right? They say, hey guys, there is this conference. Do you want to come? Oh yeah. Just send us a poster. We'll arrange everything for you. Blah blah blah. Just come and present and talk to people. Great. That's really really good. And like the more of that, the better. But already what's there, like me personally and Alex, we're really like surprised. It's good. It's really good. It's working.
It's working. Yes.
It's working. Yeah, that's the thing because. Again, you can build science, you can build technology, but then you have to make that transition to, to real world, to real companies,
Okay.
and.
So taking a pin on today, what do you need, for instance, to develop faster or move faster at this point today that would facilitate Genie Biotech to move towards the goals?
Well.
Beside the investment, but
Yes,
any
obviously,
sort of,
yeah.
or is it going the way it goes and that's already in the process? And
Okay, so your question caught me off guard because like my last months were literally just my brain was into establishing a lab, which was so draining, and this and that, and it's
you
like.
mean here in
Yes,
Vilnius?
yes, yes. To make sure you have a place where science can happen because no data, no customers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think to build. I think I was reading an article somewhere. To build a good startup, it has to be a good ecosystem. It's like in the forest, right? One deer can't live on its own, or one bird can't live on its own. It has to be a really good, strong ecosystem where, think of it, all the animals are living with each other and supporting each other in their own way, right? So starting from basics, you have to have, like lab spaces and infrastructure, and ending up with, I don't know, possible investment if you need grants, support from, business development side, like, the conferences we went to and stuff. So all these factors, they're really, really important, and obviously at different stage of the startup, I'm not maybe talking about sort of our startup at our stage, but in general, obviously one factor or the other matters more, right? Obviously, if you start initially, of course, you'll need a lab space, you need some sort of initial investment, you'll need people, right? As you transition, business development becomes way more important. So, all these conferences, business development meetings, they start playing a bigger role, but they all have to be there. And what we need right now at the moment, it's I don't know. I mean, everything kind of grows naturally, step by step.
But there is like a big support in the ecosystem for that. I think that infrastructure might be one of the, gaps for now because the sector is growing so fast and there's the capacities are overbooked. So you don't have where to put yourself in and expand or even set up a lab. So I think that's something that.
No, luckily we found
yeah.
in Innovative Medical Center, yes, the lab space, and that's really cool. And yes, so we're sort of based there, and yeah, but Again, I'm kind of reasonably new in Lithuania. I mean, I'm from here, right?
Yeah.
But let's say I'm reasonably new in Lithuania as a scientist, and I see.
Would you recommend foreign startup companies or entrepreneurs to come to Lithuania to do business?
Absolutely. We need more lab spaces for sure for that, because I was struggling, right, for some time. But in general, I would say yes. Again, you have to be realistic, and I'm trying to be unbiased. I'm not trying to sell my own country, but I'm trying to be unbiased. I'm trying to see pros and cons. And of course, for example, getting the money in the States, for example, is much easier.
Yes.
Just much better understanding over there. What does it mean to build science?
Yes.
Even Europe is way behind the States, right? But speaking Lithuania, yeah, there is infrastructure. I was actually surprised by infrastructure, by research groups are present, at least in Vilnius, I spoke to what they can do. So basically you can make science there, which is really cool. You have universities, you have smart kids, smart students, which can come and help you out. Again, in terms of funding, let's see how things go. Anyway,
it's a process.
It's a process, yes, but that could be a factor as well. Of course, let's not to forget that you are in European Union, right? So again, realistically speaking, we don't have such infrastructure as Switzerland has, which is one of the best in the world, but nevertheless, I personally was pleasantly surprised. Let's put it this way, right? I was pleasantly surprised. So you can make science happen there.
Okay.
That's
good to hear. Yes. I'm very glad to hear. Because we do work a lot on those gaps, to helping and filling that out so that ecosystem was whole and it could help startups to move forward. And for my last question, I would, because just time passed on.
It flies, as always.
Yes, I wanted to come back a bit to like the personal part. Yes, we discussed about business, and we discussed about this journey of yours as a scientist to open a startup. It's very typical question, advice. Yes, this is something, because I really know that the PhD students here in Lithuania are really struggling and to find their, place in the world. What should they do? Just an advice, if for those who would also have that motivation that you mentioned at the beginning, that you would, it would be cool, to have my company. What advice would you give?
Right. Okay. My advice would probably be, obviously I could chat for half an hour about advices. I'm capable of that.
But maybe you're available for,
that's
further
what I was about to
consultation.
say. I think at that stage, when you're a PhD student, I'm just comparing myself now, and when I was a PhD student, I understand that my understanding about the process back then was very limited. And that's normal because you're not exposed to it. So my advice would be to those students, let's say PhD students, they're like me towards the end of PhD, what do they do? Maybe they want to build or try to build a startup, they're not sure. I'd probably suggest talk to people. Not one or two, talk to several who maybe have, talk to, your supervisor, your colleague, your neighbor, come and talk to me, drop an email. If I'm here, I'm always happy to have,
I have a lot of LinkedIn messages regarding
half an hour chats and, yes. Because at that stage, you have motivation, but you may not necessarily, you might be scared because you don't know so many things, right? And if you just get that initial guidance, initial advice, that would be maybe that little push you need. Yeah. And then the journey begins.
Yes. And it's always important to know that this journey is never easy.
No.
but it's really fun.
It's fun. It's
Yes.
fun. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun.
Well, thank you, Grigorij, so much
Thank you,
for
Agnė.
coming
Thanks for
and
inviting.
sharing your story. And I would like to thank everyone for listening. And for those that were not able to hear the whole story, we are on YouTube and Facebook in Lithuanian Biotechnology page. As well, you can listen to Virtual Biotech Cafe podcast in Spotify. Thank you so much. Thank you, Grigorij. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And see you next time. Bye.